My name is Joe Lawhorn. I'm a U.S. Army chaplain, and I'm participating in the Family Life Chaplain Training Program in Fort Hood, Texas. Well, in my mind, when I hear the phrase, need for sensitivity, it suggests that there's a need to remind people, because let's be honest, people forget, that therapists need to be prepared to work with individuals and families who might be different from us. I understand why we need this reminder, because prior to being a relationship expert or a marriage and family therapist, we're human beings. And so as human beings, we bring into the relationship our own baggage, and there's also the caution of bringing our own limitations, our own hang-ups. So I get the need for the reminder. But in my view, I see that as one side of the coin. I think there's another side. There's another higher, more significant side to this issue, this sensitivity coin, if you will. And that is to not only be mindful that we will be working with people different from us. That should be a given, I think. But how can I, as a therapist, as a person, as a human being, go out of my way, above and beyond, to make even those families who are radically different from my own feel absolutely welcomed, absolutely accepted and valued, and even celebrated precisely for their distinctiveness, precisely for the ways that they are different, and all the while giving them my utmost and my very best in terms of therapeutic care. I think that's a two-sided coin. So in some, I would say there's the reminder side, but then there's also the desire to reach people of every creed, every color, every race on planet Earth. Well, as marriage and family therapists, I would say the first thing that I would tell you is that, well, first of all, we serve the public trust, and we honor that public trust. Being part of this profession, this formal profession, distinct profession, it comes with it the expectation that we honor all people, that we honor all families, and not just some of them. In fact, in the American Association of Military and Family Therapists, we have a code of ethics that speaks to this a great deal in specific places. And in fact, it's this idea of diversity and celebrating and welcoming diversity is woven in the very fabric of the values of what it means to be a marriage and family therapist. This idea, the core values of accepting and appreciating and including of a wide diversity of membership. Now that speaks to the therapists themselves. Even the therapists, among therapists, we have a wide-ranging diversity of ethnicities and cultures and so on. But then in the Code of Ethics, it also speaks to issues of diversity, equity, and excellence in clinical practice. And so that's where the treatment of clients comes into play. And in fact, the very first standard of excellence in responsibility to clients is written in our Code of Ethics. Marriage and family therapists provide professional assistance to persons without discrimination on the basis of race, age, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, disability, gender, and so on and so on. So one of the key reasons that it's important to be sensitive to diversity is it's written in our code as a profession in our Code of Ethics. Another reason that I will tell you is that the primary field that I am in and that I'm preparing for is to be an Army Family Life Chaplain. And I've been in the Army almost 19 years. And so the Army DNA and the Army ethic in which I'll be serving is already written into my code. And there is perhaps not a more pluralistic, more diverse population or people group in our nation as we have in our military. So this idea of pluralism and this idea of serving shoulder to shoulder and alongside people of every race, every culture, every creed, every religion, every ethnicity, every kind of family you can imagine under the sun, we serve alongside with. So it's important for me to be sensitive to diversity, not only because of marriage and family standards and codes of ethics, but because of the Army in which I serve. There's a place for it there as well. And then one other reason that I'll give you, and perhaps this reason trumps them all, every family is important and matters very deeply. And I think there's a spiritual component to this as well. The Bible that I adhere to even speaks to this idea. For example, the Apostle Paul in the book of Ephesians, in chapter 3, he says, "For this reason, I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family on earth is named." And I think there's something very powerful in that. And what it does is it alters my perspective to see family, to see diversity, to see some of these issues with spiritual eyes, if you will, to look at families the way that God sees them. This informs me that families are sacred to my God, and so therefore they should be sacred to me. The reason I desire to respect and appreciate diversity is because my God does. I know that question begets a specific instance, but for me personally, the worst case scenario that I could imagine would be something that related to what I said at the outset. And it's very straightforward, it's very simple. Refusing to work with someone, an individual or a family altogether, or not being willing or able to offer my utmost, to offer my very best to any person or family simply because they're different from me. To me, I know that that's broad, but to me that is the ultimate worst case scenario when it comes to diversity in the people groups with whom I'm working. Now, I want to distinguish here, I'm not talking about specific therapies or approaches or modalities to therapy, or even the therapeutic alliance and relationship that I might prospectively have with a client that doesn't seem to fit me or I them. If I don't fit a client for therapeutic reasons, then it's entirely in their best interest that I don't work with them. That's not what I'm talking about. The worst case scenario for me is my not being able to work with a family or refusing to work with a family simply because they're different or their differences intimidate me. Action steps. This is where it gets practical. As I mentioned, been a long time in the Army, and that's where I'm going back to at the conclusion of my training here. And the Army does a really good job of ensuring the acceptance of diversity and the welcoming of diversity. We do this all the time, and the Army has a way of making it not only easy, but mandated. One of the inherent characteristics of military life is this fusing together of men and women from every place, every nationality, every religion and creed under the sun, serving alongside each other, sometimes in very difficult, traumatic even circumstances. So there's this natural environment, this natural context in which the Army is a melting pot, really, of all kinds of people, individuals, and families. And because this is the case, the Army recognizes that the important need of documenting in its doctrine what the standards are to respect and this diversity. And in our doctrine, in fact, it states the necessity of being sensitive to serving with a wide-ranging diversity of peoples. So it's written in our manuals. It shows up on paper in our regulations and in our policies. You walk into any company commander, any brigade commander's office, and there will be policy letters hanging on the wall. So no one can confuse the idea of what it means to be accepting and welcoming people who are different. So it's in our doctrine, but it's also embedded in our values. The Army has a certain code of values that we adhere to. One of those is loyalty. So we have loyalty, and we have this value of duty. We have this value of respect that we bestow upon all soldiers and all peoples and all families. We have this value of selflessness. We have another value of honor and integrity and personal courage. So it's written in our doctrine. It's written in our values, and we practice and live these things every day. But not only that, We, as I mentioned, it's mandated, we do a lot of training when it comes to diversity, things like sexual assault and harassment, prevention, consideration of others, comprehensive soldier fitness, equal opportunity, the resistance of discrimination. So throughout the course of the year, we are constantly doing these trainings on exactly these topics. And not only that, more often than not, the Army tasks chaplains with giving this training. And so in a lot of cases, the chaplain will act as sort of a gatekeeper within the force to kind of help commanders and leaders at all levels make sure that we are practicing and living those values when it comes to diversity. As a marriage and family therapist, I know there are a lot of continuing education opportunities in the form of workshops and webinars. On top of that, in order to keep current with relevant issues, and on top of that, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA, of which I am a part, offers very specific training on diversity, such as exploring conscious bias, barrier analysis, cultural competence, diversity and inclusion, a whole host of opportunities there to take practical steps. And then finally, my formal education. I desire to pursue marriage and family therapy at the doctorate level, and then a doctorate of ministry degree, which has these kinds of values embedded in them as well.